It's your boy Floyd Money Mayweather, TBE, coming to you live. You're listening to Ross and the Knowledge podcast, toe to toe.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Ringside Toe to Toe. We're a boxing podcast exclusive to Sky Sports and iTunes. I'm Ross Thompson-Jenkins, as always, joined by boxer turned promoter and historian Spencer Fearon. Spencer, what are you doing, mate?
I'm blessed, highly favoured. Even better for seeing you today, Ross.
Yeah, but what are you writing down? What are you writing down?
I was just writing down one of the verses to attack Eddie Hearn.
Oh, okay.
Attack.
Yeah, this week.
Now I heard your intro with Floyd Money. Yeah, that was unbelievable. Ross, you got a mention.
That's been going quite a few months.
Sorry, I don't
I know
normally
you're
listen
busy,
to the
man.
start, you know. But
Nah, Spencer got that. But we do need a new one, Spence, don't we?
Yeah, I know. Don't worry, I'm going to phone him up and to say, look.
I think it's unbelievable. I think the last time I was here, I'll steal your line for you, February.
Yep.
And I think it was your debut week. Or one of. And
Early. It was early doors.
For those that don't know, Ross is actually, I mean, I hope you don't mind me saying, Ross, a production guy. I mean, you're a producer.
Yeah.
Somehow you find your way on the podcast, right? You like stand in as the presenter, and all of a sudden it actually works. And I remember when you done it. I mean, I don't mind telling you this now because it's been a success. Everyone was saying, what on earth are they doing sticking Ross in that? 7 or 8 months later, you're still standing.
Mate, I ain't going anywhere.
You're the face of the podcast.
Mate, I'm the voice of
You've
no one.
got a great face for the podcast.
Yes. Look, I was gonna give you a nice big intro, but you've jumped in and everything.
As
But
usual.
I was gonna say, look, there's gonna be a lot of people listening to this who are expecting a Sky Sports Matchroom loving. But we're not. We're going to go hard on you.
Oh, right, I'll clear off then.
So tell us about.
I only came for the loving.
So tell us about the record-breaking ticket sales and
Exactly.
pay-per-views that we've done this year.
It's an amazing job you've done this year, Eddie. No, I prefer the hard stuff. Let's clear this up. This podcast is for boxing people.
Yep.
You know, we're in a great position where boxing is really reaching out to the masses, and we hope those masses are still listening to this podcast. But ultimately, boxing podcasts, there's a boxing podcast as well, are for boxing people. So let's ask the questions that matter. Go in hard, slap me around, give me a telling off, tell me things we got to improve on in 2018. It's good to talk, Rossi.
Yeah, it is. Well, we'll go back to February then. You came in, right? We had Joe Cordina in that day. He turned over. You'd announced Lawrence Okoli, and there was a few others to come. Obviously, Buatsin, etc., etc. How have those guys done for you?
I think they've done really well. I think the challenge with those guys is the matching. Some have been matched absolutely perfectly. Josh Kelly, I think, is a good example. And I think Adam Booth has the confidence in him to move at a quicker rate than perhaps someone who may have had lesser amateur experience. Some, particularly Joe Cordina, in the early part, some opponents fell through, some weren't quite strong enough. But ultimately, he's undefeated. He's been very, very active. Anthony Fowler's been great. Lawrence Okoli's been great. Buatsi now has had a good start as well. I think it's probably the best time where I've seen such an elite amount of fighters starting at the same point in their careers. So, you know, you talk about those guys that were mentioned there. I believe all those guys can go on and become world champions. Will they all? No. But I believe they have the ability, if they're matched right, if they're trained right, if they live the life, because these guys are used to living their life, you know, and I think that's the advantage that a lot of these GB fighters have, is they come straight out of a system into a new system where they do live the life. And it's a mad world we live in, because sometimes a GB fighter will turn up at our office and, you know, I'll have a meeting and he'll leave and my dad will say to me, "Who's that guy?" And I'll say, "Oh, he's so-and-so from the GB team." He said, "Is that his Merc outside?" I said, "Yeah, it is." Yeah, he said. He went, "The game's gone crazy."
We're getting
what do you mean?
Footballers.
Yeah, but he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Because when people were turning over to turn pro, when they used to come and see me in Romford, they'd get their bus there. And now you've got a situation
If we're going to talk about cars, let's talk about Eddie Hearn's new ride.
Oh, no. No, listen, that's courtesy of Anthony Joshua bought me that. What can I say? No.
Is that for real?
No, he didn't. Don't be silly. Joking, aren't you? It's hard enough getting a bag of Haribos out of AJ. But I think the game's changed. I mean, there's more money than ever in the sport. There's a fantastic amateur system. But these boys coming up from the amateur systems, Benny, they're blessed. They're making good money.
They are. They're on wages.
Exactly. They're on wages. They've got the best preparation. They've got nutritionists. They've got strength and conditioning trainers. They've got the best trainers in boxing. They stay in these apartments in Sheffield. They've got this wonderful facility at the EIS. So, you know, they're not... When Spencer was boxing, it was like, you come up, you turn pro with nothing, didn't you? And that was in essence the motivation to go on.
It wasn't. Everyone knows me. I was hustling, but that's another story. But what I'm trying to say to you is, it is, and the game has evolved. It's evolved through personalities. It's evolved because, you know, if you're on a GB squad now, you're getting finance. So it's a job. That's what you do. So to say you're turning pro now, the luxuries that was, I'm turning pro. Now it's like kids would think like, I could go to anyone. But if you think of it on the reels, then you're saying you want to go to anyone. Everyone thinks like, well, I want to be on a bigger stage. And fortunately or unfortunately, the biggest stage is with Eddie Hearn for now.
Yeah, but we've got to move away from that. It's not lovely. But I would just like to say on that is that these guys have to move quicker than the traditional guy, because, and actually I think it could be detrimental to their development if they don't move at the right pace, because they've operated in World Championship events in Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan and Europeans and Olympics in Rio.
You don't do them any favours fighting.
No, and I think sometimes they need to step up that level to show their level. Yeah. Other fighters, Conor Benn, a good example, 12, 13, 14 amateur fights in Australia, has more learning to do in the early part of his career.
Right, we've got loads to get through, so we're going to crack on. One of those guys that came through that GB setup, obviously, and the only place to start this week is with Anthony Joshua. He was on the Sky campus all day on Tuesday. He spoke to us about his next opponent and if that Parker press conference got under his skin.
Well, I don't know if it's him next. Nothing's been agreed. So I sit back and wait patiently. Same situation with Tyson Fury. I welcome any fighter in with both arms. But no, don't wind me up. I just think it's like poor PR management, a lot of jealousy and negativity, and I'm not really breeding that type of energy around, so I just kind of swerve them type of clowns, to be honest. So the situation with Parker is it's presented itself recently after my fight with Takam, and nothing was presented to me, so I made the effort to speak to my team, and we've presented an offer to them. It seems a lot of negotiations are done over social media these days, but we'll patiently wait, you know, and get a direct message and say this is what we agreed, and I'm happy to fight. Deontay Wilder, I was preparing for Carlos Takam. He was preparing for Luis Ortiz and changed to Bermane Stiverne. And then after his fight, which was like a week after mine, said, Anthony's been running scared, I'm ready to fight. And I was like, I've been in the gym training for someone. How could I be running scared? So same situation. He's like, I'm ready to fight. No offer. So we looked at the situation and the landscape. Been talking to his team. Same situation. I always put it like this. If we can agree a fight with one of the all-time greats like Vladimir Klitschko, stage a fantastic fight at Wembley, put our egos aside, he could have been like, I'm one of the all-time greats, I want X%, or I want this, or I want that. I want to walk second, I don't want to walk first. But we put our egos aside and we managed to come together and put on a good show. I just don't understand where Parker's and Wilder's mindset is at, because I've worked with someone like Klitschko before. I've worked with Charles Martin, who was a champion, and I worked with Dylan for the British title. I've worked with various fighters. But I just don't understand with these two what they want, because we look at the landscape, we create more land, we create more greenery for them, but they're just not interested. Like, we want more, and it's just not reality. So I think, I go back to what I said, is I think they have bad PR management, because I think the talking is their way to build up their name. But talk is cheap in this game. Talk is cheap. So as I say, is that I just hope that they can agree to fight, because that's what everyone wants to see, rather than a lot of talking.
Now, Eddie, Anthony was in obviously yesterday, and I think I saw a change in him. Would you agree? I think there's a bit of a change.
Yeah, there is. I think you're going to see the bad man come out in 2018. I I think it's inevitable. You know, people talk about.
Sorry. What do you mean the bad man?
Well, my bad man, Spence, not your bad man. But I'm talking about. You know,
trying to work that
what I'm talking. You know what I mean, Spence. Like
the Essex bad man or the
no. I'm talking about the bad side of. People talk about. Oh, AJ, so perfect. He's a great role model. He is. But let's strip back where he's come from. What he was when he was away. That tearaway kid. You know, that's going to come out because you can't just prod someone and prod someone and prod someone and prod someone like that. You can say, I'm going to keep it respectful. I'm going to keep it respectful. At what point do you go? Give me him. Give me him. And that's where we're at now.
But don't you think that Anthony Joshua has to do that? He has to do that because of his backdrop, because of who he is, because of his ethnicity. He's got to do all of those kind of things because of the world that we're living in today. So if he was to project this big bad bully as who he is, then he'd be sold all wrong.
I think he's real. I think he's behaving. It's not a front, but that's the person he wants to be. That's the person he is. But there's also this other person, the devil and the angel. Yeah. And what I'm saying to you, Spence, is at what point does someone like Anthony Joshua, when you've got Joseph Parker goading him, Wilder coming out with all these videos, it's working. Because what he's saying to me is, feed them to me. Let me at them. He wants to do damage to Wilder and Parker. Let's not beat around the bush. You know him well. He wants to knock those two out.
Of course he does.
It's not a case
if he's now got to the point where he wants to do it, in terms of the negotiations, if Parker's willing to accept 35%, let's say, does he deserve that as a fellow world champion?
No, you've got two aspects of this. Number one is, does a heavyweight world champion deserve 35% in a unification match? There is that argument. But what I look at is the numbers, okay? So if Joseph Parker is going to earn 3, maybe 4 times his highest purse, he should be looking at that number. What I'm saying to you is Anthony Joshua will earn the same money versus Joseph Parker than he will against Carlos Takam.
Right.
And that's the tough deal to swallow. But he's willing to do it because we need the belts. But in reality, you've got one guy who's earning...
getting a better deal.
Yeah, but you've got one guy who's earning 3 or 4 times his best purse, and you've got the other guy who's earning the same purse.
Right.
Because it's all very well saying, well, it's a unification fight. This is what I'm worth. Surely AJ should be saying, well, it's a unification fight. I should be getting much more than for fighting Takam.
Of course he is, but are we looking at the styles? You've got to think about...
I know you're using Takam as an example, but do you have to pay Takam more because he came in late notice?
No, but it was just because there was a certain amount of money in the pot, and Takam took his purse, AJ took his purse. In this pot with Parker, there's more money in the pot, not like twice as much, but you've got to give another guy maybe another 15-20% of that pot, which is fine. But it's still, this is all a business. When you sit down with a fighter, the fighter says, what did I get last time? X. Okay. Is this a bigger fight? Yeah. Is this a tougher fight? Yeah. Is this a unification fight? Yeah. Whoa! What am I on this time? The same. Eh? Well, you have to be, because this is the only way the deal can work to make this fight, to give the guy what he wants.
So what would be a realistic percentage for you?
30%.
30%. If they come at 35, why don't you just meet them in the middle there? 32 point. 32.5%.
Because
2% of it is a lot of money, though, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks for that, Spence. I haven't thought of that before.
But I'm just being real.
Listen, because at the start,
he was a promoter,
I know he was. But listen, he was doing it long before me. But ultimately, we don't really want to go to 30%. We'll do it. 30% might be $7-8 million.
Right.
I mean, so this is it. But ultimately, we have to get round the table. And my advice to David Higgins when we spoke today was, come over, me and you, lock ourselves in a room, and we don't leave until that deal is done. Because let's make one thing right.
Is that the Eddie Hearn way? I think I heard a similar line when you were trying to make Quick Frampton.
Yeah, it is.
Get in a room and no one leaves.
Yeah, because you shouldn't leave. Look, when something's right, when it's the thing to do, okay, and the thing to do here is to fight Joseph Parker next, in my opinion. The thing to do is also to fight Deontay Wilder next, but we're miles wide on that compared to Parker. So when we're this close, when we're talking about 2s and 3s and 4 percentages, let's get in a room, let's make it happen. Really, people want to see Joshua in a unification fight next. no disrespect to Josie Parker, the only fight people want to see Josie Parker in is Anthony Joshua. They don't want to see him fight Lucas Brown. Trust me. This is the fight for him. And by the way, take all the glass jaw stuff aside. If he really believes he can beat Anthony Joshua
and unify the division,
become the biggest star in the heavyweight division, and by the way, you talk about $6-7 million for this fight, then talk about $14-15 million for the next one. If you truly believe it, you got to take the fight. But we have to show him the respect because he is a heavyweight world champion.
You mentioned Wilder there, and I want to talk about Wilder and where he fits in the scheme. Obviously, we wanted to fight Joshua. Can you make that happen? Is your relationship with Lou DiBella all right?
It's got nothing to do with Lou DiBella.
No.
I mean, Lou DiBella is a promoter of a show that Deontay Wilder fights on. We've had our fair share of beef, but I like Lou. I've got respect for him, but he's not at the negotiation tables to talk about a Deontay Wilder fight. We know this because there's been several meetings. He ain't been there. So we talk about 5% and 2.5% with Joseph Parker. With Wilder, you know, he wants 50-50, and that ain't right in this pie. And when we win 3 belts of the 4, it certainly ain't going to be 50-50. But we also understand, and we've been doing it for years, and with Anthony Joshua, from the debut, we have been overpaying opponents because of the risk of getting in with Anthony Joshua, because of the size of Anthony Joshua's profile. Charles Martin's a great example. Why did we get the Charles Martin fight? Because we paid for it. You know, that's why. No one else could have paid him the money that we paid him. And why did we do that? How did we do that? Because of the draw of Anthony Joshua. You know, when Dillian Whyte fought Anthony Joshua, you know, he made a fortune. You know, when Klitschko boxed Anthony Joshua, it's one of, if not his biggest payday ever. So we don't mind overpaying opponents to get things done. And what Anthony said in his interview, which was quite right, if we're dealing with the Klitschko camp and getting a deal done there, but more importantly, finishing that fight, everybody shaking hands and say, in the ring and out of the ring, that was one of the most enjoyable experiences of all of our careers. Trust me, we can work with anybody. But they have to understand the draw of Anthony Joshua. And what we talked about with the purses before, he's earned this, he's earned that, exactly the same with Deontay Wilder. How can you possibly go to Deontay, and I'll ask you the same question, Spence, you've been a fighter, you know this, right? So I sit down with you and I say, right, you earn, I don't know, $15 million against Carlos Takam. I'm going to pay you $20 million to fight Wilder.
That don't make no sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, you'd be sitting down there. That wouldn't make no sense.
But now flip it, Deontay Wilder, you made $2 million or less, $1.5 million to fight Brian Stavern.
$10 million.
And now I'm going to give you $10 million. Because I'll write him a cheque for $10 million tomorrow. But they don't want the purse, they want the split. No problem. You can have the split. But understand what the value of the split is. And look at what you're getting. Don't worry about what Anthony Joshua's getting. You know, the fact is whatever people think, trust me when I say, it's not all about the money for Anthony Joshua. That's my job, to make sure that he earns as much money as possible, and his team. We have a responsibility to do that. With AJ, he's at the stage now, financially, he's set for life. He's set for his children's life. Now it's about the legacy. Now it's about enjoying yourself. Now it's about testing yourself. He wants to do that. He wants to improve, and he knows he's got a long way to go. That's why he's working all the time from the Takam fight. If he's not working, he's thinking, am I too heavy? You know, am I gassing out a little bit? You know, my jab looked a little bit poor. What was my defence like? All these things are going through his mind all the time. But he wants to test himself against the best. And this is a long journey. We're not looking to get out of the sport next year. But already we're saying we'll willingly fight Parker, Wilder, Fury in the next 12 months.
Stadium fights, all of them?
Yeah, I mean, we thought about AJ's next fight, which will be end of March, early April, going to the O2 again. You know, we've done Wembley Stadium and Cardiff now, 90,000 and 78,000. And for AJ, it's a lot of pressure. I've got to be honest, Ross, for us, it's a lot of work as well. I mean, it's
hey, for everyone.
Yeah,
it's a
lot
Sky,
I mean, you know, it is, but when we say that, and actually I was talking to some of the guys at Sky earlier, Ross, and it was like, oh, you know, that was a tough. It's like, come on, let's pinch ourselves here. We've just done Carlos Takam against Anthony Joshua. We've done 78,000 tickets. That is probably top 10. Well, it is top 10. One of the biggest sporting events in British boxing ever, and it was Joshua against Takam. So let's not be spoilt brats. Let's not say, "Oh, that was hard work," or "Oh, me and our team going, no, blimey."
So does that's the allure of Anthony Joshua, though? Does the allure of who that guy is?
It is, but what I'm saying, Spenny, is we've got to ride the crest of this wave.
Yeah.
We've got to embrace the fact that we can do it. We can't just say, I'm saying, should we just have one in the O2? Because it's good in the O2 and it's nice. It's 16,000 people. Everyone starts moaning at me. Why aren't you giving people a chance to see it? But then you look at the spectacles of Wembley and Cardiff and what resonates around the world with people watching that.
Everyone loves the look of it, don't they?
Yeah,
they just see it out the corner around the TV.
Yeah,
and
but that's AJ. That's British boxing.
Yeah.
We are doing that, and when I say we, I'm saying AJ, his team, us, Sky, the fans. We are the envy of the boxing world right now for those kind of events. So when we get a unification against Josie Parker, that should be a stadium event.
So does that roof in Cardiff put it in pole position?
Yeah, I tell you, there's a very good chance it could be in Cardiff again. Twickenham is another one that we'll be looking at. End of March, early April is a punt with no roof. But I ask you this, do we really care if it rains? I mean, we all have a beer, don't we, and have a sing-song.
In your front row seat with a canopy
this is true. I'm walking up and down, I'm backwards and forwards.
We're in private boxes. Anyway, that's another
prawn
story.
sandwiches and all that, Spenny. But, sometimes it's part and parcel, isn't it? I mean, we've been so lucky. We had Campbell for his debut at Craven Park, dry. We had Campbell Coyle, little bit of rain. Then we had Froch Groves at Wembley, no rain. Then we had Joshua Klitschko, no rain. And then we had Brooks Spence, no rain. I mean, very, very lucky. Very lucky.
One last question, because it's got a bit AJ over and we need to move on. There's loads to talk about. Historically, some fighters, and I'm thinking Nazim, Lennox Lewis, and this might be a difficult question for you to answer, but they've walked away from their promoters. Do you does that ever cross your mind? Do you worry about relationships and the future and how you keep everybody happy?
No, I mean, look, we know where we are for the next couple of fights, and we're talking, and I've got to be honest, Ross, we
want you to lie to him.
No, I won't lie, I'll be honest. We got a very nice business, and very few things make me as happy to see where we have got to so far on the journey with Anthony Joshua. So at whatever moment that ends, and I believe we will be with Joshua for the rest of his career, I really do. And people may not see the relationship that I and him have. You might see it if you're around us, but everything's been perfect. Every step from us to Sky to AJ has been absolutely perfect. So will he ever want to go and do his own promotional company? I don't think so. If he does, mate, we will shake hands and I will say, mate, I wish you Godspeed, and we will move on. But I want to be there from the debut, which I was, to that last punch. Okay. And that would be very special.
And does Matchroom Boxing USA, is that part of the plan? I think we've spoken about this before, and I know that was part of the plan anyway, but does that strengthen your position from a business point of view that you can do
and listen, AJ is again, people don't realise the relationship. AJ is a pivotal part of the growth of that business. He's involved with Matchroom Boxing USA. And this is part of us all moving forward together. So, that was an important part. And Matchroom Boxing USA is not just done for ego. It's done with Anthony Joshua in mind, with our other fighters in mind.
Your Instagram does that.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's
good for the ego.
Isn't Instagram supposed to be good for your ego?
Isn't that what we're showing, though? Isn't that what you were just saying about shining a light? Because there was a few years ago, and we talked about. I listened back to the February podcast because there's a few things that I want to pick on, but we were talking about it then. And you were saying it's great that those guys don't know what they're doing for the modern day audience compared to what you guys are doing. Is that? Do you still believe that? Do you still think you can lead the way in America?
You have to understand the market. You have to understand the audience. I don't believe that any promoter understands the UK audience, boxing audience and boxing fans like I do. It doesn't mean that I do everything right. It doesn't mean that every decision I make is going to be clapped at by the British fight fans. But I know them and I understand them and I know how to cater for them. I don't yet know about the US audience because I have to be honest, I walked out before the Daniel Jacobs fight and I looked around and, people talk about, of course, it's not just about having a drink and having a good time. But I have to say, I'm walking through just before the Danny Jacobs main event, and people look remarkably calm and sober. And, no one's really...
It's not like a collar night in Manchester.
No, but that's what makes us. That's what's... And again, going back to, it's not just a case of having beers, but the Brits know how to enjoy themselves. That's part of the night out. Crawler walks out, people are jumping over the barriers. Go on, Crawler! Manchester! That makes me proud to be British. We're so lucky to have those kind of fans, And in America, it doesn't mean that's not in them, but they have to feel that way about the fighter. And the only way you feel that way about the fighter is to understand their journey and their story. The reason people are like that about Crawler is because they know what he's been through, and they know that he's a real Manchester lad.
Yeah, he's a beautiful human being.
He is.
Did commentary on the weekend. He's
tell the story about Daniel Jacobs. Because trust me, when you learn about the guy, you will have the passion for that man.
You talked about luck then. Obviously, bad news, bad luck recently. Bellew Haye rematch has been postponed. No one was more disappointed than our guest last week, Dave Colwell. But if you're listening, Dave, things could be looking up. Haye's already back in the gym, and he posted this update earlier on his Instagram.
So it's been 8 days since my operation of my left bicep, and rehabilitation phase is well underway. All very steady, all very slow, all very boring, all very monotonous, but has to be done this way to get the 100% results that I require. So this is the type of stuff, as exciting as this, I'll have to do over the next few weeks, all over Christmas. Also keeping the rest of my body in good condition. I'm going to try and stay under 100 kilos over Christmas, which ain't always that easy, but that's my target.
Eddie, do people still want to see this fight?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, we sold 17,000 tickets at the O2 in a nanosecond. People were offered refunds or the chance to wait for the new date. And I think we had 200 refunds out of the 17,000. So it's a big, big fight. It's been dealt a blow because Haye's been injured before and he's been injured again. This is a freak injury. And as someone amusingly pointed out to me, although it's not funny to laugh at, is that he tore his biceps running down the apples and pears. But one thing you know about Haye is he's a very determined individual. And I saw that in his eyes when he came. And I have respect for him because he asked to see me face to face. It wasn't a text message. It wasn't a press release. He wanted to see me face to face. And I saw in his eyes, he looked like a broken man. He was gutted. But he is determined. He has come back from numerous injuries. And, you know, Tony's got a tough decision because we look at the Fury fight, and that's definitely a fight that is a huge
What do you
fight.
make of their Twitter exchanges?
Oh, he's great. I mean, listen, they've spoke. I've spoke to Tyson now. He's, with MTK, we'll be speaking to them as well. It's a big fight. But the problem is when we sit down with Tony Bellew and we map out that plan, he hasn't boxed for 9 months. He's getting married next June. So we got a fight. Okay? So you're in a situation where you're saying...
Potentially twice between now and June?
No. It'll just be one fight. It'll be April, May, done. Can't go into the wedding with, your bruises and all that. So, you say David Haye and Tyson Fury. I mean, you're in a tough spot, aren't you? You've got one guy who physically could get injured. You got another guy who doesn't have a licence, has got a UCAD case. Still, he's got to lose a huge amount of weight. So it's tough for Tony. My advice to Tony, and this is what we will be doing, is we will be fighting David Haye next. And then we will be fighting Tyson Fury. That's what we want. So this is 2 fights, in my opinion, to close out Tony Bellew's career.
Could Fury be on the undercard for that?
No, I think Fury needs his own show. I mean, he can come back. Again, we haven't got a crystal ball. Whether the case with UCAD is heard in December or February, I think sometime in February or March we'll know where he stands. We can't wait, but Tony can't wait till March to know his future. We've got to make a decision. So, but if he does come back and he's good to go in March, he can box in the summer. And then he can fight Bellew in October, November. Massive fights. I like Tyson Fury against Dillian Whyte. Look at how many heavyweights.
Well, you got to find a fight for Dillian Whyte because the guy is he's
going mad, isn't he?
He's going mental, and he's saying like, "Wow, Eddie should be sorting me out."
He doesn't necessarily toe the party line either, does he? What's he like when he comes in the office?
He's very miserable, and we always have arguments, and we do very good business together. Going back to. He made a lot of money to fight Anthony Joshua. A lot of money. He made a lot of money to fight Derek Chisora. He actually made a lot of money to fight Robert Alanius as well. So, trust me, Dillian's in a good spot. What
But he's not in a good spot though, because he wants to fight though.
But
that's the thing.
Spencer, he is in a good spot in terms of the landscape. Okay, it's very frustrating for him because he sits there. He goes, "I'm not." And by the way, this has been a team effort to get him to this position. I'm number 1 in the WBC. I'm number 4 in the IBF. I'm number 6 in the WBA. I'm top 10 in the WBO.
Yeah, but he feels like he's playing a waiting game.
Well, he's playing a waiting game. That's what happens in boxing.
Yeah, but
you get to a position. But that's tough. You got to understand that you're with the best people.
But you explain that to him. That
of course,
tough.
but Dillian Whyte is an extremely temperamental young man, and we have extremely heated chats and arguments. And he will box on February the 3rd, hopefully against Lucas Brown.
Why not against Deontay Wilder?
Because Wilder won't take the fight. They won't. And actually, I spoke to Wilder's team.
Can
I said,
the
listen,
WBC not put pressure on?
Not yet. Dylan will eventually be the mandatory for the WBC when that's called, but that won't be till the summer. Right. So he's got a fight, and I don't rule out, by the way, him fighting Anthony Joshua next, because if we can't make this Joseph Parker fight, Dillian Whyte becomes a front runner for me. That's a big fight, Joshua against Wilder, against Dillian Whyte. So he's got that. He's got the Tyson Fury fight. Tony Bellew, not at the moment, but who knows what's going to happen in time. But this moment, for people like Dillian Whyte, I've been there dozens of times before with fighters who look at the landscape and say, when am I going to get my shot? When am I going to get my shot? Callum Smith was another one in that sort of position. And eventually, boom, it comes. We're well placed to deliver that shot, and he will get his shot. But in the meantime, February the 3rd, and by the way, he's still learning. Trust me. He was poor against Robert Helenius. He knows that. Helenius didn't want to fight. He ran, he made it awkward, but he knows that weren't a great performance. And there was a number of reasons. He only had 3 weeks to prepare for that opponent. But he's learning, he's improving with Mark Tibbs. And I will say one thing about Dillian Whyte. Very few people work as hard as he does away from the ring. He is really, really putting the effort in camp. He's taking it seriously, and he will be a force.
So he probably really thinks he deserves it. If he's putting that graft in, and then he wants his shot, because I guess, whenever you talk about Wilder, you talk about Joshua. You don't talk Wilder-Whyte, and that's not just you.
But I guess when you look at Whyte, Ross, do you say he's earned his shot? There's, you're sort of going, aren't you? And that's really the truth of it, isn't it? He hasn't yet beaten a elite heavyweight. Right? We were fair to say that?
Yeah. You're right. Yeah. But neither did Anthony Joshua prior to him fighting Charles Martin. And Charles Martin, we couldn't say was an elite heavyweight, but he still won a world title for him.
Exactly. Listen, people are getting... Look, Dominic Brazil got a world title shot. He never beat an elite heavyweight. Eric Molina got a world title, 2 world title shots. He never beat... But unfortunately, Dillian Whyte is a handful. And these guys ain't mad on fighting Dillian Whyte because he's not a huge draw and huge name yet. The rewards aren't massive. So therefore, like if you're a heavyweight, I'll give you an example. Like, do you really want to get in there with Dillian Whyte? Unless like the dough's great and, or why don't you just fight Bermain Stavern? Or I'll tell you what, I'll give you Dominic Brazil instead. Yeah. Because Dillian's a handful, mate. At the press conferences, in the fight. But he will get his shot. And listen, it might be against Joshua. Because if we can't make the Parker fight and the Wilder's fight's unrealistic, give me other opponents. Dillian Whyte's in the top 3, isn't it? I mean, you'd like to see that, Benny?
I mean, you talked in one of your interviews about Wilder Ortiz and that potentially happening.
Yeah, I think that might happen.
Yeah.
I think Wilder will either fight Ortiz or Brazil. Probably Brazil.
Yeah.
And that we're going right in the same
Dylan's
direction.
At home stewing about that, probably.
Yeah, but look, listen, we offered Deontay Wilder $3 million plus US TV. It's basically $4 million. And we even said to them, OK, if you want to wrap it in with a Joshua deal, we will look at that, because that was what they were saying first of all. They don't want to fight Dillian Whyte. It's not even give us another $500,000, give us another $1 million. It's just not on the radar for them.
How can the Ortiz fight happen, and can you as a promoter do anything to stop it or block it? If the guys...
Wilder Ortiz?
Yeah.
No, not really. I mean, you've got the WBA banned him for a year. And the WBC have got this clean programme, and we saw it recently with Neri as well. Fighters that are failing drugs tests but not getting banned. I mean, it's very strange. Like, Neri was another example. Apparently it was contaminated meat. They was the excuse, and it was... But why have a VADA testing programme if when a fighter fails the test, they're not banned? I mean, they make such positive moves in that respect, and now the WBA have a VADA. The only way you're going to stamp out cheating in sports
It's
through
to
PEDs.
ban people.
One is to ban people, Spenny, but also random testing. Because these fighters...
But some of them do have random testing.
Yeah, no,
like when
no.
Dillian Whyte got...
No, Dillian Whyte... Look,
There's
in
random
Britain,
testing. Yeah.
Britain, we have a brilliant system with the British Boxing Board of Control. Every fighter who takes part in championship fights is randomly tested 365 days a year. It's the only way. Do you think that the way that the advances of science and everything these days, that a fighter is going to test positive on the night? You might as well take on the night testing and throw it in the bin. You got to get them 8 weeks out, 12 weeks out, even before that, before they go into their camp. These guys are advanced. But Britain is one of the few countries that actually takes
It's not
it
the guys that are advanced, it's their scientists
of course.
who are advanced. Their chemists are
because
advanced.
the guys wouldn't want to... The people... By the way, fighters don't turn up at the gym and think, I want to get on the peds to get better. Coaches and trainers